After spending a while playing both multiplayer and single player, I want to talk about this voxel roguelike you probably should give a try. When you first load up the game, you will be given a bit of exposition in the form of this Star Wars-esque wall of text, and then promptly plopped onto the main screen. Personally, I find this to be a bit much to just immediately throw at a player, but the story for this game is simple enough, it's not really that big a deal if you miss it anyways. The settings for this game are very extensive and cover everything from borderless window to making the game even harder on yourself. So many options are rare among even AAA games, so I can really appreciate the amount of fine-tuning one can do to really hone their experience. Getting into the game, you find yourself with a few items at the entrance of the mines. If you play something like a monk, you will start with practically nothing, while other classes, like the sexton, will start with a wide, varied kit. You will hear the voice of the Lich himself practically mocking you before you set a foot inside. Going down, you will find monsters, pitfalls, and traps. The majority of monsters are melee only, so long-range attacks are quite effective early on. Barony has many paths you can take, as there are secret exits for floors every few levels that lead to wildly unique and different places. Every 5 levels, there will be a checkpoint and an entrance to a new zone. First, we have the mines, then the swamps, the desert, and finally, the ruins. There is a bit of a sort of post-game after this, but I do not plan to talk about it in this video. If Barony does anything right, it is making each monster scary enough in the early game that you wonder if you should try and fight it at all. However, as you go through the game, you will realize pretty quickly that the AI for most enemies is very susceptible to kiting. This is compounded by the fact that nearly every enemy in the first 5 floors are melee exclusive, meaning that you can easily evade them if you have not picked up too many heavy items. As you get to the latter half of the game, this becomes less of an issue, as more monsters have spells and dangerous ranged attacks as well. Now, considering that I feel a very large part of the game is building your character, I believe it would be very important to go over the skills and what all your character can do in the game. Going into the skills, the game has a total of 16 separate ones. Each skill can be leveled to 100, at which point it will gain a special benefit usually pertaining to that specific scenario the skill is most used in. I will try and briefly go through each one of them and explain their purpose in the dungeon. Starting with the weapons due to their simplicity, we have swords, axes, polearms, unarmed, maces, and ranged attacks. Each weapon simply is leveled by hitting things with them, obviously. Once you reach level 100, with swords you will get plus 5 attack and bleed enemies on charged hits. With axes you will gain plus 10 attack and inflict the slow debuff on charged strikes. With maces you deal plus 5, but also paralyze enemies. Polearms inflict knockback, and ranger weapons just never degrade. Considering if you are using any of these weapons as your primary feature, you would be hard-pressed to try and locate the ancient item associated with each one that does not degrade anyways. Ranger leaves a bit to be desired for what is supposedly a legendary upgrade. On the flip side, axes and maces get huge buffs that easily breeze you through most of the rest of the game. A kind of oddball skill is that of blocking. Whenever you block, your AC will jump up exponentially. Well, depending on your blocking skill at least. And this will really help you survive the big hitting heavy attacks at the very start of the dungeon. Once you legendary blocking, the benefit is that your shield will never break, which seems just as useless as Ranger, but from what I can tell there is no special shield that just never breaks, so it's not really just a useless bonus, especially when you are getting hit by multiple large enemies at the same time. Next are the skills designed for more utilitarian uses. Swimming allows you to swim faster, at first being unbearably slow to eventually being able to walk on water. The skill is alright and extremely easy to level up, but pretty quickly loses its uses after floor 10, as water becomes less abundant. However, if you have gotten to legendary in the skill, you will be able to walk over lava, which is a nice touch, and guarantees you can access certain secret areas without taking massive damage later on. All in all, swimming can be most likely skipped without too much of a worry. This game does have things like levitation after all, that while not everywhere, items enchanted with it are not exactly super rare either in my experience. Trading is a simple skill. The higher you're trading, the better prices you can work out with shopkeepers. The legendary for trading is having every shop turn into something of a general store. By the time you unlock this ability, you should be swimming in cash better than Uncle Scrooge himself, so this can really get you some items that you might have had a problem achieving any other way. Stealth helps you survive in a less direct way than things like health. It can be an extremely powerful skill against most enemies in the dungeon, and can let you practically skip all the enemies of a given floor if you want to. Obtaining legendary status is a long, slow process, but rewards you with invisibility and the power to deal double damage upon a backstab, which is an insane increase when paired with things like axes, for example. Another skill that holds probably even more power is the leadership skill. However, the entire system I personally find to be more of an annoyance late game. As your leadership increases, you will be able to recruit more and more companions. This, of course, having the consequence of just being too many companions to know what to do with. And if you have things like goblins or insectoids in your party, they will constantly make noise. On top of this, you have to order your followers one at a time, which is so annoying if you end up having somewhere around 10 of them. I enjoy the system a lot for maybe up to 3 companions, but doing a follower build, for example, will just make you want to pull your hair out. Once you reach level 100, you will gain the ability to befriend goblins and insectoids. This sounding like a great upside, and by some accounts I guess it is, but considering you will have stronger allies in humans, which are able to put on all types of armor, while insectoids and goblins simply can't, it's pretty negligible. Last of these is appraisal. The higher your appraisal, the faster and more likely you will know what exactly the nature is of what you have in your pocket. It is extremely handy for pretty much any player, and holds no real time investment other than just picking up items you were going to anyways. Once reaching level 60, you will unlock the ability to identify useless glass and higher quality gems. The capstone ability is simply that you immediately appraise any item you attempt to pick up. This is mainly for convenience, and because appraisal gets faster the higher the skill, you practically have this ability by level 99 for example anyways, but it is a strong enough skill to begin with, it's not really needing a flashy finish. Last, we have the skills more attuned to those using more unconventional forms of self-defense in the dungeons. These include magic, casting, alchemy, and tinkering. Tinkering being the most unique out of these, lets you craft useful items on the fly while also setting traps and having a higher chance at unlocking a locked chest with little annoyance. Mastering tinkering will reward the player the ability to fix any item and extra gold upon opening a chest. As said before, late game you would be hard pressed to not have the unbreakable items equipped anyways, and gold is very easy to come by, but in the early game this is a huge deal and can really make a run, assuming you can get your hands on a repair kit that is, as they are quite rare, and the only way I have found to reliably find them is to go to a merchant. Alchemy is probably the most questionable of the skills in my opinion. There is really no benefit for alchemy late game that you wouldn't have on command from knowing magic. From the DLC, there might be a few races that benefit greatly from it, but speaking on the base game alone, I don't really understand the point of learning such a complicated system for middling benefits. Once you legendary the skill, any potion you brew will have a +2 modifier on it, extending the effects in some capacity. Magic is an amazing skill, being that it does everything alchemy can, but on command and with no materials needed after unlocking the initial spell. To top it off, you gain the spell Domination after achieving the capstone, thus letting you mind control any enemy you wish, excluding bosses. This is just the leadership capstone on steroids, with the added benefit of not having to worry about gear at all. Now you can have all the magic skill in the world, but if your casting skill is low, it can mean practically nothing. Casting and magic are sort of intertwined, intertwined in that leveling one pretty well indicates you will need to level the other. Whenever you cast a spell, you are doing magic after all. However, in case there are some ways that I do not know about in which you can cast spells without leveling casting, don't. If you are a newbie to casting, you will most likely not even perform the spell you are trying to cast. This not only being a major annoyance, but can also get you killed in some niche situations. The major capstone, other than casting your spells, no question, is a mana-free attack. Force Bolt now becomes a free spell, allowing you to fully use magic alone if you want to go down that route. It's not incredibly handy late game, but you can really spam it with an incredibly fast fire rate if your mana drops too low, even on the final boss. I think where Barony has its largest struggle is right at the beginning. I was planning on having a whole section of this video talking about the extensive tutorial, but it's such a sludge to play through, I would honestly suggest playing the game and learning as you go. This way, you not only have to sit through probably the longest tutorial I have ever seen in a game, but you can also develop your own strategies and playstyles. This is compounded by the fact that as a new player, when you die, there is nothing exactly pulling you to make a new character other than just to do so. And if you have gotten to the latter levels, it can be heartbreaking as making one small mistake can flush 10 plus hours down the drain within a second. I can respect the philosophy Barony has on having the player be the one to truly accomplish its feats and challenges, but on brand new players, true roguelikes such as this can be a hard sell. There are no souls like Seraph's Last Stand or crystals like Hades. When you die, that is it, and it can be pretty rough for such a long haul of a game. Barony is a good game in my eyes, but if you don't have the time to invest in a game that will probably just kick you down the stairs at the first opportunity, nor the patience to slowly go through carefully across 10 or more hours of gameplay, you probably are just best playing this with friends as a good time for a bit, if at all. It's much more fast-paced, and silly, carefree gameplay is a lot more newcomer friendly. Having said all of that, if you want a game that allows you to fully go in depth and customize a character idea down to its very core, Barony has plenty of mechanics, playstyles, and tactics to keep you entertained for days even. I would honestly say it is the best way to enjoy the game. Come up with an idea, put the character together, work out a solution to the issues on surviving with them, either die or win, repeat. The devs have very obviously put a lot of heart into this game, and that's shown from things such as small, tastefully done Easter eggs, down to consistent updates and DLC for the last couple of years. If you watched this video and thought that maybe this game is for you, then it probably is something you should try on sale. However, if this doesn't sound as something to fit your fancy, you're almost definitely not missing out. Now is a more quickfire section of this video that I've written specifically for people that want to play this game and might need a few tips going into it. None of these should be spoilers, but they will tell you a little bit about the game and some things that I think would have been helpful to know when I was starting out. On multiplayer, you can share your spells with party members so that everyone can have access to the best spells at a given time. You can level casting up pretty quickly before you enter the dungeon by simply standing at the entrance, safely spamming your lowest costing spell. This will only get you so far, but every little bit counts. Keep all non-cursed scrolls. In the latter half of the game, scrolls are the only effective way to truly boost your power and keep you relevant against the stronger opponents of later on. Do not worry about followers too much. Trying to keep them alive will most likely get you killed pretty quickly in the process. If you see a merchant selling a tinkerer's kit, buy it immediately. Even with the lower levels of tinkering, you can use worthless items to create useful tools, such as lockpicks, to help you along your adventure for practically free. Magic and ranged are OP. Magic and ranged both provide varied options to approach a given scenario. I recommend going with a class a little spread out in different ways instead of something like the Barbarian early on. This keeping your options open and probably will keep you alive longer. This also comes with the benefit that you can feel out what part of the game you enjoy best. Appraise everything. The higher your appraisal goes up, the less likely you will accidentally equip cursed gear. Appraise anything before you put it on, with only a couple of exceptions. If you have no armor equipped, the first iron helmet you find is one of them. Iron helmets are simple, usually break quickly, and benefit no extra stats, so equipping a cursed one will almost always be better than not wearing a helmet at all, since rarely you will find -2 cursed armor, and never will you find -3 at the beginning stages of the dungeon.